Hello and welcome back, and that is right. Today we're going to talk about the brand new Synology BeeStation. This is their entry-level, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, straight ready out the box alternative to third-party cloud services. Now, a lot of you watching this video are going to go, well, surely you just described the majority of Synology NAS systems. They're all alternatives to cloud, and that is true. However, this is Synology's attempt to bring the first genuinely idiot-proof solution into their whole catalogue of solutions. And in this video, not only are we going to be reviewing it just like we have all the other Synology solutions, we got to work out if this is a good idea, because this is a different kind of solution from Synology. And dare I say it, and we'll touch on this later, what it's replacing is definitely going to be a matter for discourse. But what is it? Quick TLDR right now, this is a one-bay cloud solution. But straight away, even by saying the phrase one bay, that's already going down the road of kind of slightly nerdy tech knowledge experience of these devices. This is for people who do not give two sausages about tech spec. They don't care about gigabytes and terabytes. What they care about is just a solution that does what it's supposed to do and sits over there in another building or in the corner of the room doing what it's told. So, the BeeStation is your own private cloud. For those of you that have seen the WD My Cloud boxes over the years, the old Seagate NAS boxes before they got shot of them, this is an attempt to fill an ever-increasing void in the private cloud market as cloud prices start to soar, not in, related to, but not completely exclusive to, the rising cost of electricity. But on top of that, it is that idea of these solutions giving you the ease, suitability, and convenience of public cloud services, but on your own terms. Arriving with that certain Synology swagger with applications and services for mobile devices and desktop client tools as well, bringing over a lot of the kind of modified versions of existing Synology catalog applications like a simplified alternative to Synology Drive, but this time presented more in a Google Drive Dropbox fashion, giving you cloud synchronization with third-party cloud services, not just C2. We'll talk about that later on. On top of that, to be able to access and use by multiple users, not just one user, but up to 8 shared users as well. And on top of all of that, arriving with pre-installed storage and genuinely available to be utilized straight out of the box, something that no other Synology to date has offered, and arriving at about 800 grams and with a 3 years warranty, and with a price tag, the RRP right now of $199. But again, tax, your local retailer, who knows. But let's see what this includes for your bunts. Let's go ahead and have a little look inside. We've got our quick start installation guide there. And again, this is probably more useful than any other Synology instruction guide that we talked about before, because this device is designed to work immediately out of the box, as mentioned. And the result is that there is some scanning of a barcode there to do, but more on that later on. Also inside, we obviously have the unit itself in this tiny little package. Our accessories kit includes a teeny tiny little PSU there. I'm sure the power is on screen with a clippable attachment there. And an Ethernet cable. It's an RJ45 Cat5e cable there. And finally, you've got the clip for that PSU. There's nothing more in that box. Going to get the unit out of the bag. Have a little look. And again, this does have the drive inside, so this is one of the few Synology I've ever seen that rocks out the gate with drives included. Now, this isn't going to come as a huge surprise for many of you that Synology are going down this road. Notwithstanding, as you see here on screen, when Synology in 2023 released the B drive, an external SSD available in a few different capacities that had, in accompaniment with Synology's own BeeStation and B software included for use with it. This was designed as a kind of hybrid local drive that could also utilize the network adapter of the connected client system to communicate with other devices as well. This is stylized far more like a normal NAS, and thanks to Synology rolling out their own branded storage drives, more on this later on, it has allowed them to start rolling out pre-bundled solutions like this with the storage media inside. We'll talk about design in just a wee moment. One of the things I will say, I think the packaging, given This is a system that arrives with a drive inside. I'm not suggesting it's bad, you know, it's single cardboard and it's got multi-layers to it, and of course this is shipped in an additional external carton. But given that a lot of their solutions arrive with nice rigid foam wrapped around them, I'm a little disappointed there isn't a little bit more rigidity to that packaging for something that has a drive already pre-installed. Particularly when you look at things like the WD MyCloud system, we've got one back here, they arrive with quite sturdy foam around them. Even the one bays do as well. So even though this is a one bay system, kind of disappointed it doesn't have more rigidity to that packaging. But I will say that is an incredibly small external PSU for a NAS. It's a 36 watt PSU, not dissimilar to what you've seen in the DS120J or the DS124. And on top of that, you know, the kit's fine, and what you get with it is all fairly standard. And again, as mentioned, it's one of the few Synologies that's actually rocking out the gate with that storage media. But let's talk about the design of this thing, right? Now, when I first heard that Synology were rocking out the gate with an entry-level new kind of idiot-proof one bay, I kind of thought they would just recreate and reuse the existing chassis they've had in previous releases, but they haven't gone that way. They've gone for a completely new chassis design here, and I would argue very similar, if not a fraction shorter, than the WD MyBook one bay series there. There's no trays, there is no ability to remove the drive in here. Given it's a one bay, hot swapping was never going to be on the table, let's be honest. But I still find it quite weird that you can't really get to the drive inside. So, fun fact, this review was recorded a few weeks ago, and when I did it, I actually decided not to open up the Synology BeeStation, mainly because I didn't really want to show the device in any kind of way that a user who was buying this off the shelf as a simplified cloud would enjoy. But I do know during this deeper review that I really had to show more of the inside. So I've done a dedicated teardown video on this, but I wanted to include a kind of sped up version here in the middle of the bigger review. Now, inside, there are no fans. This is a silent system. It doesn't run with any kind of active cooling, heavily reliant on passive cooling instead. The main controller board is attached to the rear of the internal storage drive, and this device, or at least the one I've received, has got a Synology HAT3300. More on that in a moment in the video, but Synology are probably going to scale out with bigger storage drives on this product family. The simplicity of this is actually pretty impressive. It's just a single PCB connected via the SATA connector to the rear of this SATA drive, held in place with a couple of clips and held in place within the larger chassis there. Again, there's no means to upgrade this. There's no hot swapping, of course, because it's a one bay. And Synology does not endorse adding bigger, hard drives or SSDs inside. But at the very least, I can't really fault the construction of what I'm seeing here as both a silent system here and changing the existing hardware architecture of the likes of the DS124 or even the DS223J and simplifying it into this much lower scale and probably more power efficient system. The drive that's inside is a Synology HAT3300 4T branded drives. Now currently these drives are Seagate Ironwolf 4TB drives with Synology firmware on board and branded for the use in their systems. What I will say, I've heard a few rumours online that they are starting to integrate other third-party vendors like Toshiba drives into the value tier. They've already got Toshiba drives at the Pro and Enterprise kind of tiers, but I'm not sure if all Synology 4TB drives like this one are always going to be Seagate later in 2024, but that's something for another video later on. Inside, we've got additional ventilation there at the top. Although you can hear the drive inside, as it is a standard class 4TB, that drive is exceedingly quiet when the system is in operation. And when you do get this set up for the first time and you connect to it, you will be into this device within 30 to 60 seconds, unless there are firmware updates, of which Synology have already rolled out 4 or 5 pre-release on this device from Synology/download site. All of that going directly onto, I imagine, an internal DOM inside running from the system and that drive. So where the OS lives when it's in operation, I've yet to confirm. But I will say that when it is running, it is quiet, and thanks to that PSU, it's very low noise as well. Now, with regard to the chassis design, there's no real side ventilation there. It is heavily based on the passive ventilation there on the base and that ventilation there at the top. That isn't a removable panel, at least not without some leverage. I will say when it comes to the ports and connections, it's not going to blow you away. It is clearly designed at entry level, and you do have a gigabit Ethernet port there on the base. You've got two USB ports, one in A, one in C, both of which are USB 3.2 Gen 1, so 5 gigabits per second connectivity. There's a reset pin, and there is a power button there at the top. So overall, fairly standard stuff, not really going to blow anyone away in terms of the hardware architecture. I will say the design is quite sleek and nice. I think there might be users that would have liked to have seen other chassis colours, but apart from that, I think it's quite nice. It's using a plastic matte black material there, and it's got the Beestation logo there on the side. And, you know, I'm going to miss, you know, this design quite a lot. I know Synology have started kind of getting rid of the J series. I think the last J series is probably going to be the DS223J, unless, you know, we're waiting on Synology rolling out a larger capacity version of this, which does bring me to the point that this being a 1-bay kind of bums me out that there isn't a 2-bay and a 4-bay option. Yes, Synology are probably doing a gradual rollout, but the point I'm making is this doesn't have any RAID support. There is support of USB backups, there's support of synchronized cloud backups there in the background, but the lack of RAID as a safety net, not a fan of that at all. So, although I'm pleased to see this 1-bay, kind of sad there isn't a 2-bay rolling out at the very same time. I would at least like to know that there's a 2-bay coming down the line. But apart from that, in terms of design, can't really fault in it at 199. That's not really hard, you know, I can't really argue with that. Now let's talk a little bit about that internal hardware, because although I can't crack this open, I will say that given its position in the market and that there are budget entry-level pre-populated NASs in the market from the WD MyCloud, from Buffalo and the Link Station, from a number of third-party kind of hard drive network connectivity boxes out there with drives inside, a lot of those boxes use incredibly modest internal hardware. Generally, these might be, in the case of WD, for example, dual-core and quad-core Marvell 32-bit ARM processors, even in 2024, and they are lackluster in the extreme, with 256 or 512 megabytes of DDR3 memory included. Now, this, on the other hand, fair play to Synology for something that is arguably a lot more basic than a number of their solutions. They've not held back on the hardware. It's got that quad-core Realtek ARM processor there, the RTD1618B, and on top of that, it arrives with 1 gig of DDR4 memory. That's quite a lot of oomph for a device that's a great deal more streamlined and feather-clipped than the likes of the DS223, the DS423, and the DS223J. And given that it's not running DSM, remember that it is running the Beestation or BSM software, it doesn't even need all that hardware to run the bulk of those applications. And I think a lot of that hardware is to maintain consistent stability when it is in utilization. Now, as good as that is in terms of that hardware and that memory that isn't upgradable, but again, 1 gig for an entry-level NAS isn't too shabby, I will say you're not really able to stretch its muscles enough. I couldn't find any options for accessing any kind of SSH client. I couldn't utilize any kind of app center there. I couldn't go in and dig particularly deep or really maximize the utilization of that hardware. Again, that's because this is not that. This is not designed with DSM. Having access to all of that hardware, it's not, you know, it's not designed for that kind of expandability and tooling and configuration that a standard DSM NAS has. So as good as that hardware is, just bear in mind that a lot of that is for stability's sake, not for actually taking advantage of and making the most of. Now, I touched on that drive inside at launch. There is only a 4TB model that using that 4TB Synology drive inside. And there is no capacity from what I can see to remove that drive and install another drive in there. Again, I've not taken it apart yet, but I will also add that when you do download the firmware packages for this, shout out to Black Void. We did a video with him at the tail end of 2023 when we were looking at the software and pulling it apart, what we thought was good and bad. Full credit for him for getting the ball rolling on that one. I will say that this only having that drive and only available in 4TB is both a good and a bad thing. Bad thing, real quick, I wish there was larger capacities out there, 4 TB and only one option. You're going to lose a lot of the market there. Why didn't you just do what you did with the B drive and have the 1 and the 2 TB and rock out 4 TB early doors? But on the good side, for that price, if we zoom in on that $199 price tag there, sans tax, sans your retailer markup of choice, compare that against a lot of cloud service providers out there, because you kind of have to. This is designed for people moving away from Google Drive, Dropbox, iCloud and the like, but they're not looking to run containers. They're not looking to crack on with a surveillance station set up there. And they're not looking to install Plex. They just want storage, and they want storage that is native to their operating system. And in that world, $199 for 4 TB is cracking good value for data that you own. What do I mean by that? Let's look at the big three. We'll look at 3 consumer object easy storage for users: Google Drive, Dropbox and iCloud. Okay, and your Android, we could have gone for Windows actually, but I'm going to go with iCloud just because I think a lot of users are going to be utilizing this as targets for their iPhones and the like. So those platforms, Google Drive and Dropbox, it is $7.99 per month for 2 terabytes of storage. So again, whether that is you want to pay monthly and it racks up to $96 per year for both those platforms for 2 TB, or you get some of their annual packages and it'll set you back around $80 a year for each of those for 2 TB. That means for 4 TB of storage, you'll be paying per year between I think it is $160 and $192 for 4 TB of storage per year for those. Now, it's higher for iCloud. iCloud starts, from what I can see here on my notes, at $9.99 per month for 2 TB. And they don't really do the annual package thing. So if you wanted to go for a 4 TB option per year, you're looking at between $200 and $240, depending on your device and utility, per year. So again, that means that these options I've just mentioned from Google Drive, Dropbox and iCloud, they cost pretty much the same as this, and you would pay that to those cloud services for 1 year. And then on the next year, you're now spending more money. Whereas this, with 3 years of manufacturer's warranty, has got 4 TB of capacity available to it, access to all of the apps and services, and on the second year, you've already made your money back compared with the cloud. And with the cloud, with every year that passes and the more data you put on there, eventually you're going to need to take that data off the cloud. What happens then? Well, then you've got to buy something to store it on. So it's a complete negative spend when you go for the cloud options at that level. I will also add that when you do see cloud storage providers and you look at simplified basic object storage, and then you start seeing block storage and business level storage, even at the lower tier, unless you pay for additional pro or expert or business options, you lose out at those low prices of things like deletion retention policies. You lose out on ingress and egress rates as well. And that go to the policies and the number of users that can access it. What do I mean by that? Well, for example, if you go for the larger 2 TB cloud scale, have a look into the terms and conditions and data fair usage policies. And what you find with Dropbox, Google Drive and iCloud is if you want to download large amounts of data per month, they will charge you even more. This, on the other hand, the data on board, you can upload, download to your heart's content. And the only limitation is your network and your internet upload and download speed. And that brings to the other factor that with those other cloud services, if you delete that data, you're not 100% certain it's deleted, are you? You've deleted it. You don't know that they've deleted it on the cloud. They've got about 1 million squillion backups to their credit. But it still means that when you delete it, you're not convinced it's deleted. This, not only can I guarantee no one can access it just by disconnecting a LAN cable, and now it's about as accessible as a house brick, but on top of that, I can take this and smash it into 1 billion pieces. And with that, I know that data is gone and inaccessible, unless you want to get like a pair of tweezers and a magnifying glass and you really, really want to spend the next million years trying to put that data back together, which I don't think you do. The point is, the price point for this and what you're getting in terms of hardware, storage, internal hardware and capability and feature set is phenomenal, and I've got to give it credit for that. But let's crack on, get this plugged in and talk about the software somewhat, shall we? heading over to the desktop PC here, there's actually quite a lot to go through, and for the sake of brevity in this review, I'm going to skip over some things. But if it's not already live, there is going to be a huge dedicated BSM mobile and desktop application overview, and if it is already available, it should be linked in the description. But I should tell you right now that I'm not really going to be looking into the mobile applications for B files and B photos for both Android and iOS. But as hopefully you can see on screen, recording from my mobile, I've already dug into that quite a lot to do with the AI photo recognition there in the background, the sharing of files, going through a lot of the indexing there. Then when we go through, there is of course going through Synology B files that allows you to go through a lot of this remotely and access the files and folders on the NAS, but also simultaneously back up to and from your mobile devices. Again, the dedicated BSM video will go into a lot more detail on the mobile applications, but this overview for this review, it's going to look a lot more at the desktop side of things. So accessing the device via the web browser, as well as utilizing the BeeStation desktop application for Windows that will allow you to not only synchronize files and folders on your PC and Mac system directly to the device, but also natively see the content of the system on. I should move the camera there. I've realized while I'm talking. It will allow you to utilize the client application on the bottom of the screen there to access the content of the system, as well as export diagnostic logs for Synology if needed, but also configure a lot of this synchronization tool so you can have this tool on multiple systems that have all got live synchronization with the NAS there. And as you can see on screen, if we right click, much like Synology Drive, it allows us to see that there's 82 gig of data in that folder on the BeeStation, but it's not taking up any room on my local system, and I'm able to use my native file explorer in order to integrate and interact with that data. I can, if I choose to, right click and use the BeeStation options to get a link to share with others. On the other hand, if I've made up versions of that file, I can browse through them, or I can pin a copy of that file at all times on this system. The same goes on the system side here. In B files, it allows me to browse a lot of these files and folders, find all of those files and share them, distribute them, allow access, deny access if I choose to, and it's all presented in a very user-friendly fashion. I'm also going to make a dedicated video comparing BSM, B files and B photos against that of Synology DSM, the fully fledged DiskStation app, in a later video. But I'll tell you right now, BSM, B files and B photos will feel very limited if you are used to using DSM, because DSM gives you all of that control, all of those apps and services, all of the bells and whistles, all of the ability to control, manage with tailored access to a lot of your system. But with that, there's a steeper learning curve. There's going to be a lot more complexity, which is specifically what this system is designed to avoid. Now, to put that into perspective, when you are logging into the device, it's worth highlighting you have to create a Synology account when you want to utilize the device for the first time. You have to access it via the portal.b.synology URL, and the access portal. Creating a Synology account is free, and when you create that account, it allows you to remote access the B drive at all times. But it's worth highlighting when you've done that by default, and I've touched on this in other videos, by default, local area network access, or LAN, is disabled by default. I'm not a big fan of that, but you can enable it later on. The same thing goes with SMB services to allow the NAS to be accessible as a mapped network drive on your local area network. Again, we're tippy-toeing into more complex features, which is specifically what the B files device is designed not to do, but nonetheless, I don't like that LAN access is disabled, because that means if you don't have internet access on where your B drive, your BeeStation system is, you run the risk of complete inaccess to your data. It's one thing to lose that inaccess, or to have your data inaccessible remotely over the internet. We take that as read if we lose access to the internet. But what about if the device is in the same room as you? The idea that I could have a NAS in the same room as me and I can't access it over the local area network because there's no internet access boggles my mind, and I don't like the sound of that. But digging into the user interface of the system configuration, as you can see, we get real-time information about what our storage is doing and how much it's occupied by. Adding users, up to 8 of them, can be done, and these users will have access to the areas of storage on here, but you can also create ad hoc shares to a lot of the files and folders that I'll show you later on. I know I'm talking very quickly, but there is a dedicated video going into way more detail on these apps and features. But adding people is quite straightforward. Either have a copyable link that's created, or you can send them a link via email. It's very, very quick and can be done directly from the interface. But one of the things you may notice while I'm going through this is this whole system is running from a single 4 TB drive. There is an SSD inside that's used as the bootloader, and I'm not sure if the OS resides on that SSD. The firmware indicates it might, but I can't confirm it because of a lack of any kind of SSH access on this device, as well as any kind of resource monitor. That means that a lot of although the OS may be running from the SSD, all the operations from indexing to thumbnail generation to sharing to uploads to downloads are all acting from a hard drive internally that is a 5400 RPM single 4 TB hard drive, which has a very poor multiple operations at once or simultaneous access compared to that of an SSD. There's a reason laptops, MacBooks all run from SSDs with their operating system these days. And the problem with using a single hard drive for general access to the system, it means that the minute you start running multiple things at once, the system will slow down. But to Synology's credit, when that happens, it does warn you, and you'll probably see that later on with some of the alerts in the top of the system there. Now, beyond the usual system configuration, you can find out more information about the setup of the device. Don't worry, I'm going to blank all that later. On top of that, if you want to back up your configuration, it can be done either to a USB drive or it can be backed up to a Synology C2 cloud. Again, I've mentioned this in other videos. I like the fact that Synology, with their cloud service support, does allow you to bolt on cloud storage providers, but that is on an object level. So that allows you, for example, with this share here, this is a synchronized share with a specific folder on my Google Drive. You can connect to it with your Google Drive, or you can add other synchronized folders from within that user interface as soon as you synchronize the connection between both the Synology NAS and your Google Cloud. It also supports other cloud services as well, so you can add Microsoft OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox. They can all be bolted on easily. So if you're already using cloud services, free or paid subscription, you can bolt those on. But it's not the same as a whole system backup, which is everything. That's an ad hoc object file folder synchronization there that can be one or two directions. A whole system backup can only go to a USB or Synology's own cloud. So it's a real shame that you can't back up the whole system to your third-party cloud there. But restoration of those is very straightforward and easy, and I'll be covering that in another video. Updating the system, you can either have it by default to install and download the latest updates, or you can have it to only action when you want it to, which is quite handy, but I'm kind of surprised it's not automatically downloaded that. Finally, in the advanced settings, we've already talked about that LAN access there, but it's also worth highlighting you can get email notifications via your Synology account to erroneous login attempts there if there's any errors with any of the actions within the system, and I'm sure they're going to scale up the level of those notifications later as Beestation Manager improves over time. You can even arrange remote access for Synology technicians to log into your device remotely if you want to have kind of tech support with them. And when I first got this device here for review, it was way before any of the main updates. It was like 1.00 firmware, and some of the features weren't available, but I couldn't download them, so I contacted Synology, who then remote accessed once I enabled this feature, which generates a unique authorization key, by the way. So they can't just come in, they need that unique generated ad hoc, so it's not a consistent key, to get into the system. And it was good that they could do that, and for those that really need their handheld, that could be very advantageous for some of you. Now, B-Files. B-Files, once again, there is the B-Files desktop application, there is the B-Files iOS application, and as mentioned earlier on, you can use your mobile phone if you wish to browse and go through the system, as well as back up files, folders, and even photos directly to the system if you need to. More in the dedicated video. But from here, you can browse all the files and folders via the web browser, so no need to use a third-party client or map the system. You have the choice of either using that client app I mentioned earlier on to interact with the system natively using your own file explorer, or utilizing the web browser here. And you can upload files nice and easily here at the top left, whole folders, individual files, and more. On top of that, this does allow you to not only look at photos, So whether you want to use the Photos application or not, you can use this tool to access the list of photos and more on your system. But on top of that, you can play music from within here. So again, it has tailored multimedia support to play music media, play movie media if choose. All of that is possible. But do bear in mind, again, as you can see here, because I'm trying to do too much at once, the system is beginning to hang. And that is what I mean about accessing a standalone 40B hard drive and not an SSD. But again, for $199, that's not a huge surprise. We've already discussed those integrated cloud services there that allow you to synchronize and add those platforms on, but you can also go ahead and attach USB drives there. As you can see, I've already created a connection with a USB backup that has got, if we go into all of the individual files and folders, we can actually see that I've already created a backup synchronization between the USB and this system. We can create a brand new one if we need to go through some of those options. It allows you to pick which file and folder on the USB and which file and folder on the Beestation you want to synchronize together. You can also choose whether you want that to happen every time that USB connects automatically. You can also choose whether you want the file to only exist on one or the other. There's lots of options for you to go with down there. And again, once you have connected that drive, you can go ahead and use that USB drive anyway as an external storage area if choose to. And remember, there's two USB ports on this device, a Type C and a Type A that are 5 gigabits per second. And if you've got a USB with partitions like I've got here, you can actually be quite creative about how that USB is going to be utilized by the system. And again, you can access the contents of that USB just like you can anything else via the file folder manager. Again, you can go ahead and access this via the mobile application for both those platforms, as well as utilizing, as mentioned earlier, that tool there, Beestation there at the bottom, that allows you to kind of get a lot more out of your device. And there's actually quite a lot of configuration options open to you to synchronize those multiple folders. And there's a decent degree of, customization. Not huge. I'm certainly not going to compare it to the likes of Synology Drive, which in of itself is an absolute killer application. But again, there is an element of complexity, the team folders. There's an element of complexity with the client applications. And although it is a user-friendly app, there's no denying that there are users that are going to find it a bit intimidating to set that up. So otherwise, I do like B files there, and the option, again, we can see there at the top, we're already seeing that the Beestation is busy with all the stuff I'm showing you, which is unavoidable given that 40B hard drive, but it's still a decent enough tool there for managing your files and photos in the web browser, as well as with those desktop applications. Now, what about photos? Well, photos, whether it is that you're utilizing the mobile application to upload your existing photos, and again, you can go for all of your photos in the past, or you can go ahead with just new ones moving forward over Wi-Fi or using cellular data. There's actually a decent amount of configuration on the mobile side. Again, the full detailed BSM mobile and desktop app review, we'll go into more detail on that one. But if you've ever used Synology Photos or even Google Photos, they are highly comparable there. The photo application, I would say, does a reasonable job of allowing me to see the photos that I want to see, scrape the metadata there in the background and find out more about them. But just once again, bear in mind that when the system is being accessed quite heavily, like I'm doing now, loading some of those photos does seem to take a bit of extra time, because at the moment, the system is running lots of different things that I'm commanding it to do. Now, from there, if we dig into, for example, the albums, we can look at some of that AI photo recognition. So, for example, facial recognition, it allows me to go through and all of the faces of people it's indexed and gone through, it will then dig through, find these faces, and allow me to start naming a lot of these photos. Obviously, sometimes I look different. Sometimes I'm wearing a hat. And therefore, we can merge some of these photos like so, that allows us to type a name. We can go ahead, merge those two together, and boom, I've now got that. And moving forward, once my face is in more uploaded photos, it will start adding it to that database, currently at 163 photos. It also allows me, for example, to type in, and let's go for Robbie and Ed. It will find photos that have got both of us together and present those together, because I've used facial recognition to put those together. And as we can see there at the bottom, it has found those photos and merged them together. But one of the things I will highlight, as you've already seen, is sometimes loading up these photos takes longer than it should, because of that indexing, because I'm accessing a drive remotely over the internet and not via the local area network, and that is going to be a pain for some. Also included is AI subject recognition. As you can see here, instead of faces, this time it identifies things. And as good as that is, for example, the food tab, that's still 658 photos of food. And I know there are photo recognition apps out there from Google, from Apple, from QNAP, I might add, that actually differentiate it down. So when you click food, it will go into types of food: pizza, burgers. I don't have a healthy diet, right? Drinks, it will break it down into alcohol, soft drinks, different kinds of those drinks. Whereas presenting them all as just one tab, I think could be better. And I think that's something that QNAP's AI could stand to improve upon. There's a little bit of differentiation there, but Italian food, Japanese food, that just feels just wrong. Moving away from that, there's also the scraping of metadata on those that allow it to take advantage of location data there. So, for example, if I look at certain locations that photos have been taken, as you can see on the left, photos from China, photos from Taiwan, photos from different areas of the UK. As good as that is, it's worth remembering they don't have the map feature that Synology used to provide in some of their Photos application. And I think that would be far more useful than what we're seeing here on screen, that right now it's still presented in that thumbnail fashion. And again, as you can see, while we're doing this, we're generating more thumbnails, we're indexing more, and that single 4TB hard drive can present a bottleneck. Now, again, sharing photos is really, really straightforward. And when you do share a photo, you've got the option to add passwords. You've got the option to add expiry date, just like you can with any file and folder. And the same goes when you're accessing it via those mobile applications I mentioned earlier on. All good stuff, all very easy to accommodate and adapt for. On top of that, if you're going through photos, you can apply intelligent filters. So whether it is as you're adding people over time, or when photos were taken, types of photos, or locations of photos, not only can you use this feature to begin breaking down some of these photos into different subcategories, but on top of that, if I did have photos of me in Belgium, which there isn't any unfortunately, it will allow you to create new specialized folders. So say I want to create a folder of me of photos taken in 2023. It will do that. Let's go for ones where I was in Taiwan. So this will now present those photos of me in Taiwan. Look at that comfy devil there. I can then take these photos and turn these into a new album if I so choose. Again, just start selecting photos, then you can select them all if you choose, and then if you select all, you can then go ahead and turn that into a brand new album. Again, lovely stuff there. Good stuff, and stuff that we've already seen present already in the Synology Photos application. But the Synology Photos application, not only is it nippier because the system I'm accessing is an x86 processor and far more powerful than the ARM that the BeePhotos is running, but on top of that, this has got multiple drives inside and I'm accessing it locally. Things that unless you enable local access or LAN, and BeeStation starts arriving in SSD configurations or arriving in multiple drive configurations, is always going to feel slightly clunkier. But nevertheless, this is still an incredibly user-friendly way to access your data compared with that of DSM. And again, look out for that DSM versus BSM video. Overall, if this was on an SSD, for your storage, it would certainly run fast, and it would take care of a lot of those indexing and multiple actions at once woes that we've discussed. As a simple access point into the world of having your own cloud away from Google Drive and more, this is a very good choice for $199. But let's roll back to the studio and summarize today's review. So what do I think? Well, on balance, overall, I do really, really like this. One, I love how straightforward and easy it is. As someone who has set up hundreds of Synology NASs in his career, I'll tell you right now, I have never set up a device as easily as this. This genuinely was pop it on the table, plug it in, use my phone, pop in the serial number or scan the 3D barcode. 60 seconds, I was in. It was that straightforward. Two, I absolutely love the price point they've gone for on this. Again, got to factor in your tax and your local, availability. But it's still no denying your 199 RRP for 4 TB of storage. Synology have done a very smart thing there. And with WD let's be frank, have shit the bed in the last few years in terms of, hack attempts, the delete attack of a couple of years ago. Then there was WD MyCloud going down a while ago. They've done a really good job, Synology here, of trying to reallocate and repopulate that area of the market that WD have slowly kind of dropped the ball on, and arriving with that price tag that makes it competitive even within 1 year of ownership versus Dropbox, Google Drive and iCloud cannot be understated there. Also, when we talked about this in the software a bit, I like the fact that not only does it have cloud synchronization, so if you have an existing area of cloud storage, you can synchronize with it, but Synology didn't do the dick thing and just completely use their own Synology C2 services. Sure, you can, synchronize this with Synology C2, but it's the idea you can also bolt on your Synology, the Synology with Google Drive, Dropbox, and other platforms as well, which I think is quite cool with them. Also, it's quiet, it's low power, it's low impact, something that I think a lot of users will underestimate, especially when you think about having a device in close proximity as a private cloud. A lot of users will dismiss moving away from cloud services onto private cloud private ownership on the basis of noise, power consumption, and the cost of electricity, whereas this combats all of those points beautifully. And I think overall, Synology did an incredible job to release this device at the tail end, frankly, of WD MyCloud's reputation in the private cloud sector, and start trying to occupy that kind of small business, solo user, student gap for private cloud solutions as the cloud providers raise their prices. Is it perfect? Sod no. Number one, again, popping on my NAScompare hat, this thing is Billy Basic beyond measure. I miss a lot of the feature set of other bigger solutions here. I don't like that it doesn't have write one to read many. I don't like that it can only be 8 users. I don't like that it's 1 gigabit Ethernet. Sure, it's a hard drive, but that hard drive can still hit 160 to 200 megs on a good day, and I'm being throttled to 1 gig. Also, I don't like I can't buy unpopulated. I really, really wish Synology provided a 0TB version and then their populated solutions, because that's what WD did, and it still was popular. Also, only a 1 bay model at the moment. I think, yes, RAID could be complex, and the configuration of these things could be complex, but I think at least a mirrored version of this with 2 drives in sense makes sense to me, and I'm surprised that's not available on day one. I don't like this. I can't access the App Center, so, I can't use Surveillance Station. I can't use Hybrid Backup. That was a far more manageable tool for me. I don't expect it to have Active Backup Suite or Virtual Machine Manager with that hardware. But no Synology Chat, no Synology Office, separate in of itself, not just locked in with the Beestation software. Even Plex Media Server I can't run on this. And also, when I was setting it up, and I touched on this vaguely earlier on, I don't like that I need to have a Synology account to use this, and I need to choose to enable LAN, because by default LAN is disabled and you need a Synology account in order to set it up. Both of those things I am not as keen on. But I know I'm in the minority when it comes to entry-level storage users and users that are looking at this as an alternative to the cloud and ease of setup. The target audience for this isn't me, so I have to at least appreciate that fact. And for simplified storage users and those that just want something that gets the job done with a low impact, low resource use and low care factor, this is a solid option for those users, and for them I do heartily recommend it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. There is a written review linked below over on NAScompares, and we'll be talking a lot more detail about this device, what it brings and what it doesn't compared with that of the J series, so do stay tuned for that. But if you need further assistance with your storage, use the free advice section over on NAScompares, big blue button on the right hand side of every single page. Go to the Discord, go to the ask.nascompares forum, or go over to Ko-Fi or Patreon, where you can join our supporters club, where from there you can get access to the videos early, get expedited support by us, or just hire us for a Zoom consultation to help you with your own data storage needs. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.